Hey everyone, and welcome to Chef AJ Live. I'm your host, Chef AJ, and this is where I introduce you to amazing people like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. My guests today are Henry and Henry. They actually have first names too, Annette and Graham Henry, but that's what they go by. And we are going to hear their story. They're broadcasting all the way from Germany, so it's nighttime for them. Please welcome them to the show. It's very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Great to be here.
Yeah. So we were in, and what I love about my show is I really don't have to do very much to book guests because every time a guest is on, they get an email thanking them. And I say, do you know anybody else? And you were introduced by Dr. Shireen Kazan, who's been on the show a couple of times. So she must think very highly of you. And I can't wait to hear your story of how, well, obviously you're from the UK, you say. Where did you hear about a plant-based diet? When did you adopt it and why? Whoever wants to go first.
It probably should be me just because of the timeline. And it happened probably about 20 years ago. And it's been a very long, slow process, really. But I had endometriosis and I had surgery for it and it came back. It's a chronic condition. And I didn't want to go through the same surgery again because I'd had the full-blown rip me open kind of surgery and I didn't want any of that again. And so I went looking for alternatives. And to cut a slightly long story shorter, I walked into a bookshop one day and it said Healing Endometriosis Through Nutrition. And I thought, right, I might give that a go. I got the book. It was very detailed, quite biological, which was good for me because I needed some science because I didn't believe in these other ways of doing things because I'd had a complete medical mindset for most of my life. And I did what the author suggested. And I never went back to the doctors. For endometriosis, not at all. Certainly didn't go to hospital, didn't need any surgery, even though that was being talked about at the time. So the thing that I did at that point, because this wasn't a plant-based book, but she encouraged me effectively to completely ditch dairy. And that was my starting point. So from then on, I cleaned the diet up and I ditched the dairy. And I think that probably had a big impact. And it was a relatively gradual process where I was letting things go a little more along the way and becoming more conscious of the food choices I was making for my health. This was all for my health at the time. I had no concept of other issues. That just wasn't really where I was. And then we got together again. We first met in Germany, which another part of Germany in the 1980s. We're quite old. And we met again. Graham got in touch with me through something called Friends Reunited, and we met and 2 years later got married, and I think you need to take the story from there.
Yeah, so at the stage we re-met, which was in 2009, so 13 years ago now, I was around about 100 pounds heavier than I am now, and I struggled with my weight ever since about the age of about 10, when my parents were concerned and they took me to the doctor, and the doctor said, yeah, well, he's obese. This was back in, bear in mind, this was back in 1973, 1974, where it wasn't as common as it is today. And I didn't know what that meant. I just knew that I was, I was obviously overweight, felt self-conscious about the way I looked at the age of 11. The doctor looked at me and said, well, you need to eat less. So he said to my parents, you need to put him on a diet. So my parents really had no idea what that meant other than just eat less, go on a crash diet. Calories, that's the thing you need to cut down on. And I remember being pretty miserable because of buying all these things that were just low fat, virtually no calories, tasted like cardboard. Basically, I lost a few pounds in weight, and then I got so bored with it, I put it back on again. And that really is the story of my life for the next 30 years, that nothing I tried really worked because I was just trying to cut down on the calories, but stick to the kind of way of eating that I'd always eaten, which was really very much the standard Western diet. Didn't eat a lot of junk food, but I just ate kind of more a typical Western diet. I had a career in a corporate career for most of the time from the age of about 20 to mid-40s, and that involved a lot of travel. It involved eating out. I was traveling at one point about 20 weeks a year, traveling around Europe, staying in hotels, eating breakfast in a hotel, lunch in a cafe or restaurant. and dinner in the hotel restaurant. Obviously, I was on my own, so I was having the odd glass or 5 of wine, beer, etc. And that carried on for quite a number of years. So by the time that Annette and I met again in 2009, I was around, what was it in terms of pounds? It's about 240 pounds, I guess. I'm trying to remember because we work in stone and kilograms mostly here. But anyway, I was 100 pounds heavier than I am now. And I was on high blood pressure.
That's a lot. I can't imagine that. Do you have any photos? 100 pounds is a lot.
Yeah, I do actually on our website on the About Us. I don't have one to hand to show now. I should have actually sent one in advance. I never thought about it. Basically, everybody knew me as the bigger Graham. I mean, I was kind of that's how everyone knew it. It was partly that was my identity. I was on high blood pressure medication from the mid-90s because obviously being overweight affected my blood pressure. I was also on statin drugs for a while. I mean, my statin count was not super high, but it was just considered an additional risk factor for being overweight with the high cholesterol, etc. But I didn't know what to do. I mean, I went to see the doctor. The doctor said, well, you've got to lose weight, but I was never given any advice how to do it. So when I met Annette, and she was happy to accept me as this bigger man. It was never an issue for her. I realized that I just started to adopt the way that Annette was eating because it was convenient. It was I'm pretty open to eating. I'm not very fussy with food, and that's probably one of my problems. I just really moved over to the type of eating that Annette was doing, which actually was filling, it was tasty, and incredibly, I started to lose weight without even trying, without counting calories. And that was really the start of the new journey, where I started to lose weight regularly without really trying and enjoying my food. So I think I'll pass back to Annette now because I think. One thing I should say, sorry, I actually eventually came off the blood pressure medication around 5-6 years ago now, because my blood pressure was I was beginning to feel dizzy, and I realized that my blood pressure had gone too low, and the doctor was happy to take me off the blood pressure medication gradually. I came off statins as well. So for 6 years now, I've been taking absolutely no medication. My blood pressure normalized. And we walk every day without fail 4 to 5 miles, and we've been doing that for the last 3 years, and that several years, and that helps as well. But going back to Annette, maybe she can describe our journey from the point onwards where I'd started to lose the weight.
Yeah, because this is now a bit more of a shared journey. One of the things that the author of the book had said that had struck me was to eat something raw with every meal. And I managed to do that. I didn't really understand the reason why she suggested it, but I managed to do it, even if it was munching on a raw carrot before I had my cooked meal. And that gave me an interest in raw. And I started to investigate it a little bit more. And by the time we were together, we came across somebody who was running a raw retreat. So we went off to Wales for this raw retreat. And Graham detoxed in a fairly significant way. I won't go into detail. And then we drove away and said, no, I don't think that's what we want to do. But by the time we got home, we thought, yeah, maybe we do want to do that. So we bought the stuff, the dehydrator and the blender, and so the big blender, and went along that route. And we even developed a business, a kind of sideline really, where we were providing meals for other people. They were raw meals and they were quite gourmet, and I became I can't cook. My cooking's not that great. Where heat is concerned, but seemingly I can put together raw ingredients and make something rather special, and it was good and I enjoyed it. However, this was not an ideal diet for us at all, but we didn't really know that at the time. And I got right at the end of 2017, I got flu, and it was followed for the whole of the next year and beyond into 2019 with chronic fatigue. And so I knew pretty early on I needed to do something about my diet. And I'd got little voices in my ears about people like Dr. Neil Barnard saying, that for things like diabetes, it's not the sugar, it's the fat. And I'm thinking, really? And Dr. Greger was saying the same thing. I thought I probably should pay a bit more attention to this. So I turned things around quite significantly quite early on, because I thought there's something here that I need to take on board. And so suddenly, luckily as well, I would just say that while I was still recovering from the flu, the only thing that I could eat for about a week was fresh fruit and salad type vegetables. That's all I wanted. So that gave me an indication as well. It kind of supported the notion that I needed to do something else about the diet. And that's what I did. Ultimately, I changed from the very high, it really was a high fat diet. I didn't think so at the time. I've never needed to think about it. I didn't have a weight issue ever. So I never considered it. I don't know where all the weight, all the fat was going that I was eating, because coconut oil was a big deal, and nuts and seeds and avocados and lots of oils on dressings. Oh, it really was.
It's going to her liver.
Yeah, I think it was going to my liver, because I palpated that area, and it was tender and felt inflamed. So that was fairly alarming, I would say.
Interestingly as well, that during that time, I'm obviously having lost the weight. Interestingly, I wasn't actually putting back on the weight when we were eating that way. And I'm not quite sure how it affected me internally at the time. It maybe did have some impact on me, but it didn't actually manifest itself in terms of weight gain. So I've managed to keep my weight pretty much constant since I lost it initially. So it's interesting as well that I think there's a certain degree of bio-individuality there, that what you eat does affect you in different ways. But ultimately, we decided that we needed to change things, didn't we?
We did, and it coincided quite nicely with us having decided to do a year-long course by two doctors that I think you know, AJ, the doctors Rick and Karin Dina. We did their Mastering Raw Food Nutrition course. And actually what it's done for us is it's actually taken us slightly back a bit from the raw food and more into the whole food, the whole food plant-based kind of arena, which is where we are now. And this one seems to be where we will stay, I think, because it's clearly a good move for both of us.
Yeah, I think it was the best thing that we wanted to actually underpin our knowledge, because we realized with the gourmet raw food episode, we realized that we thought we knew everything there was to know about healthy eating, but we realized we actually didn't. And a lot of what we gleaned by then was from sources that perhaps were not as, let's say, rigorous as what they could have been. And we thought we really need to, if we're going to do this as business and do this as a lifestyle from now on, we really need to get information from people that are trustworthy, reliable, that's evidence and research based. And we'd come across Dr. Rick and Dr. Karin Dina through some of their video presentations, and we always enjoyed them, and therefore we decided to invest in the program, and it's the best thing we ever did. It gave us so much more confidence to be able to talk knowledgeably about plant-based nutrition without having to do a 4-year-long course at a university, etc. Of course, we're not able to give any clinical information or diagnostic information. We're actually educators, but we do know how it all fits together in terms of from a nutritional point of view. And that was so good for us. Coinciding with that also, that I gave up my career within the corporate environment. I worked in publishing. I gave up my career to devote more time to our business, which was very fledgling at the time. And I decided I need to do something else to supplement my income. And I actually became a product advisor at a UK health store, health and supplement store, which is the UK's largest and most well-known chain. And I had to take exams there, and that proved to be excellent as well, because I was able to directly have an interface with members of the public who were coming in with all sorts of ailments and advise them on things related to nutrition and what I'd learned as part of those exams as well. And that I did that for 5 years, and that gave me, I realized that I just absolutely love helping people and inspiring people to more healthful lifestyles. And I think that's something that we both enjoy doing so much, because we feel that we've been through that process ourselves. We've made mistakes on the road. We know what
and we've had the amazing realization that something that works well for a gynecological condition, which is what I originally had, helps him to lose weight and come off blood pressure medication and statins and so on. So that was exciting when we started to realize how it all fits together. And there's a much bigger picture, of course. We've also much more recently become very aware of the climate issue that relates to the way we eat as well, and how important it is. And there's really no option now. It's something that we have to do. We have to make sure that people at least know that this is something that is going to help them to be healthier, and also to do their bit, if you like, for increasing the chances of the planet surviving. So we know it's a big deal, and we want to be on the right side of history where it's concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the title of our talk was foods, Saboteur or Saviour, and I think that really applies to both of us in many ways, because for me it really did sabotage a lot of aspects of my life when I was younger. I lacked confidence in my teens, in my 20s, my 30s. I didn't actually have a serious relationship until I met Annette in my 40s. Because I didn't have the confidence, because I was overweight. So I realized how it does affect people's self-esteem. And so for me, that was a sabotage. Also, one of the first jobs I got after leaving university, I turned up for an interview. I really wanted the job. It was a really exciting job that it meant a lot to me. And I didn't get the position, which I was gutted about. I was really disappointed, because I thought I had a good chance. And then I got a call about a week later after getting the rejection to say, actually, the job is open to you now. It said, because the person who was going to take it has given back word. So if you'd like to have it, you can have it. But the reason I didn't give it to you in the first place was because you're overweight, and I thought you wouldn't manage the travel and carrying the pilot case that with all the books that I used to present as a publisher's rep, which I actually was extremely offended by, because it's never stopped me from doing things like that. And I realized that there is a lot of say prejudice around about people who are overweight being incapable of doing things. But at the time, that really hit me hard. But it still wasn't enough for me to solve my problem, because I didn't know how to solve it. And that's the problem that so many people who are overweight are facing, that they want to, or if they do want to, they don't know how to. And they go maybe to Slimmers World or Weight Watchers, and they lose the weight, but then they put it back on when they finish the program, because they don't actually know how to it's not really sustainable. And you've got to be able to enjoy what you eat every day for it to be sustainable. And we found something that works for us, that happens to be low calorie density, high nutrient value. And to us, that's the secret. And we're just we so want to spread the word that people who are open to trying it, because we feel it's so exciting. And we know, AJ, Chef AJ, that's really that is what you represent in terms of making those kind of changes as well.
Well, I couldn't agree with your statement more, that you have to enjoy what you eat every day for dietary changes to be sustainable. Because that's why when the people go on these little program shakes and pills and weighing and measuring, they can't do that forever.
No, that's it. When I was working in the health store and health and supplement store, I used to get I'd get like young women who'd come into the store and they'd say, I really want to lose weight. Have you got any tablets that I can take? And they'd go to the carb blockers or the fat busters, and they'd ask my opinion, say, which one can you recommend? And I was the worst in some ways. I was the worst and the best employee in terms of advising, because I used to say, you don't want to take those. They're actually really bad. What you want to do is I'd take them down to the food section and I'd say, these are kind of things that you can try. If you eat this, if you eat some of these foods, they'll fill you. They're full of fiber, etc. Of course, what did I get? I got glazed expressions, not interested, because people want quick fixes. So this is something that if you want to lose weight in this way, you have to be open to it. And hopefully what we do is it's about inspiring people, not dictating or preaching. It's got to be something that you've got to be wanting to do at your own pace. And that's so important.
Yeah. How long did it take you to lose the 100 pounds?
Well, it was actually very gradual. I think I lost it in tranches. So I maybe lose a stone, let's see, in pounds.
14.
I lose 14 to 20 pounds, maybe in kind of 6 months. And then I'd maybe plateau for a while, and then it'd kick off again. I think overall, from getting to my highest point, which was around 240 pounds or more, I was from getting from there to where I am now, which is around 154 pounds, 160 pounds. It took me probably about 4 years overall. So in no way was this something that I was going out to like lose it as quickly as I could, because I realized that I was actually enjoying life. I was enjoying what I ate. The weight was coming off, and I was feeling better all the time. So there was no hurry on my part.
Yeah.
And you didn't know where the end point was either, did you really?
No, I didn't know where the end point was. I remember my family seeing me after they'd not seen me for a while, my parents, my sister, and they said, "God, you look ill. You look gaunt. You look thin." And I said, "That's called being a normal weight, Mum." And really, that's it. I don't think that they were used to seeing me. They always used to see me as this bigger person that probably looked 10 years older than I was. And suddenly, my features had changed. So I thought, I can't do right. They wanted me to lose weight, and when I've lost weight, they're concerned I've lost too much. So it can be a challenge sometimes to get family members on board.
Absolutely. Annette, one of the live viewers was asking if you could talk a little bit more about your endometriosis.
Yeah, I guess I'll give a bit of a description about how it affected me, in that it was extremely painful, and it took a long time to diagnose, because it does. That's quite typical. It can take around 8 years apparently. And what I didn't know was I had a cyst on one of my ovaries, and every so often, as it seemed, it turns out it was every other month, which I haven't computed. As I was ovulating, it twisted, and I was in excruciating pain, as in lie down in the staff room. I was a teacher, kind of pain, and go to hospital and see if they can find anything, and they didn't. So it took quite a while to diagnose, and eventually I had a scan that I paid for a scan, because my doctor was just pushing ibuprofen at me, and I knew that wasn't the answer. So I got a scan, and then when they saw the cyst, they had me in the hospital quite quickly, because they didn't know at the time what it was either, whether or not it was endometriosis or something else. And so I had, as I say, a full-blown operation at the time, because I didn't have keyhole surgery where I was. And it was pretty unpleasant, and I didn't want to go through it again. And I decided that if I were able to do something different, I would. I don't quite know where this came from. I'm very glad it did, because I only had a medical kind of mindset in terms of healing from anything, or actually not even healing. I don't think it is healing now, but to deal with the symptoms. And so finding the book on food was quite miraculous, really, especially when I realized it worked. And the thing that really clinched it for me was because giving up dairy was probably the biggest change. I didn't find it especially difficult, I have to say. I'm very lucky in that. But it was the biggest change. And one of the things that she'd said in the book was it might be a good idea to give up dairy if you're from an atopic family. And I didn't know what that was. It turned out to be families with certain allergies, such as hay fever, which I had. And by the summer of that year, having started this process earlier on in the winter, I didn't get hay fever that year. And I've since then had virtually no hay fever. So it worked on that level too. And I was delighted. And it gave me the clue that what I was doing was probably right. And for a long time, I had no idea why this diet might have impacted on my body in the way that it did in terms of the endometriosis. But gradually, I've come to understand it a bit better. I mean, there is no conclusive explanation for it. Medicine still doesn't understand why it happens. They still don't have a response. And frustratingly, they say it's incurable. And I find that, because they never talk about food, I find it very frustrating. And I think the food is really key to a lot of women's health issues of that type. So PCOS as well, and fibroids can all be helped and possibly eradicated for some women by changing their diet. And I wish I'd known this much younger, because I have no idea how long this was setting in. But I do know I had a pretty awful time growing up as a teenager, such that I needed to have one day off school every month in order to be close to the bathroom. And I just wonder how early these things started at. And I wasn't on a particularly bad diet by most standards. It was the 1970s. My parents hadn't caught on to processed foods particularly, but there was meat there on most occasions, and not as many vegetables as I would now incorporate. I didn't bother with fruit because I wasn't very interested in it. I was keen on chocolate, the kind of thing. And so it didn't suit me, clearly didn't suit me, but I didn't know that, and neither did anybody else. It wasn't particularly known at the time, and now it is better known, but it's still not out there properly. And the same with the chronic fatigue. There's no suggestion that food might help, might alleviate those symptoms, and indeed it does if you get it right. I wouldn't have been able to move here to Berlin in the midst of a pandemic if I still had chronic fatigue. So I've moved on a bit to the other illness there, but I hope that gives some kind of overview of what I was experiencing with the endometriosis, and just how wonderful it was and surprising that initially, because I didn't believe in food being a cure, how wonderful it was to not need it. Oh, there is one other story that I think is quite amazing. It's possibly somewhat genetic. We possibly have a genetic predisposition to this illness. And I say we, because I have two sisters who very soon after I had endometriosis, they also did, and also had surgery for it. And the next in line, so my sisters are both younger than me, the next one phoned me up one day and said, "What's that book you read on endometriosis? I think I've got it coming back again and I don't want it." And I told her the book, and I was laughing while I said it, because I thought, she won't read it. She doesn't read books. She watches films. She doesn't read books. But she did read this book, and she did everything that was suggested. And not only did she overcome the endometriosis, but very soon after, she became pregnant, which she thought by this time she thought was impossible. And so I now have a nephew as a result. He's 18 now, and that wasn't looking possible. So that's a pretty good story. It changed her fertility, it seems.
Yeah, that's amazing. I went on your website, and I hope people can see this.
Yes.
Your before picture, Graham, and wow, that's quite a transformation.
Yeah, I think I was at my biggest there. I think, I remember feeling when I saw that photograph a few years later. How you have this disconnect when you see a photograph at the time, and I guess you're trying to see yourself in a different light. But when I saw it a few years later, I thought, wow, I really was big. And I think this is what is typical, that it's almost like a self, how do you call it? Saving yourself kind of ploy. Can't think of my words.
Like a tactic to kind of make yourself feel okay about how you are.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And really it was, I'm actually, and it's a shame because I'm embarrassed to look at photographs of myself at that size, and I shouldn't be, but I guess, it's me, and that's how I feel. And one thing I will say, that it wasn't like I was desperately unhappy through all of those years. I've always been a fairly upbeat person, but I lacked confidence, and I was very sensitive to comments about my weight, and that's not nice when you go through life almost feeling ashamed or guilty of the way you look, and we shouldn't feel that, because it's what's in there that really matters. But from the perspective that I've actually lost the weight and I've gained better health, and I've got so much more energy than I ever used to be. I mean, we're both 59, and we do, as I mentioned earlier, we walk regularly. We're so pleased that we took the step, and it's not been linear. It's not been a linear progress, as we mentioned, because we made mistakes along the way with the gourmet raw food, and it took us quite a long time to eliminate all meat and fish and eggs from our diet. I was quite fortunate because around about 5 or 6 years ago, I was diagnosed with a food intolerance to egg yolks and dairy, cow's milk, and what was the other one? Red Merlot grapes. I used to love red wine. So overnight, I eliminated dairy, eggs, and red wine out of my diet. And actually, surprisingly, I found it quite easy. I thought I would struggle. Annette was very, very supportive of me, and she actually gave up eggs as a result as well, very close to that time. And the last thing to go for us was fish, because we were convinced that we needed to eat fish, oily fish, for our omega-3. We didn't know then what we know now, and that we know we can get it from algae or algae, however you want to pronounce it.
And it's in seeds,
and it's in seeds and
leafy
etc. And so ALA, or whichever form you want to take. But at the time we didn't know that. But I think the fish went in about 2017, and that was the final step to us becoming fully plant-based and adopting a vegan lifestyle.
Incredible. Who's the owl with you in that photo?
Oh, that was it was a raptor center. So raptors are the kind of birds of prey, and it was somewhere where you could go and actually fly the vultures and the various, like owls, barn owls. That was a European eagle owl, and it's the most beautiful creature. I remember it being on my arm, and it's incredibly heavy as well, because if you have a barn owl sitting on your arm, you'll barely notice it. It's like a feather. But this owl, I remember thinking, wow, that's pretty heavy. And I remember thinking, I'll keep my eyes well out of the way of its beak. But yeah, that was wonderful.
Cool. Well, people are wondering what it is you guys eat, especially that you ate to lose 100 pounds. And Kathy wanted to know if you're SOS free or if you're low SOS, sugar, oil, and salt, that is.
Yeah, I would say yes, pretty much. Certainly, we don't use any oils anymore. Any oil that we get comes directly from the whole food that we eat. So we do have nuts and seeds in our diet, but not certainly not for me, not prolific use. My intake of oil is quite low these days. We don't add salt either, do we?
No, we do.
We do use miso, but we don't add salt.
Yeah, we tend to get salt from our fermented foods, so like kimchi and sauerkraut, miso. And we're fairly careful that we don't have too much of that, because obviously, even though it's supposed to be healthy and it's fermented, and we don't want to have too much salt. So we don't actually have a salt pot and add anything. We haven't for years, actually. It's all just from the foods we eat. And as Annette mentioned, in terms of the oils, I mean, I call Annette the dressings queen, because she makes great dressings. And that's really important as well. And that's one of the things we like to get across to people, that because people always say, if you're plant-based, what do you do to make your food taste? Because people are so used to eating the processed junk food that's got all the salt and fat and sugar, etc. And we tend to liven up, if you like, our salads with a great dressing. So Annette will use flax seeds, chia seeds, hemp seeds as the fat element, and we'll blend it together with tomatoes, miso,
whatever we want to have it. It could be a curry flavored one, or tomatoes we use quite often, and sometimes occasionally I don't put any seeds in the dressing at all, so it's a thinner one, and maybe use courgette for the substance, if you like. So there are always other things.
Zucchini.
Oh, zucchini. Sorry.
Yeah, I remember it's an American audience as well. The other thing as well is, because the question was, what did we eat, or how do we eat, and how did I lose the weight? And because it's changed in terms of at the beginning, I think initially my weight loss was down to eating a lot more plant foods, a lot more salad, vegetables, fruits that were low calorie density, and I was swapping that out for the stuff that I used to eat that was high calorie density. So I wasn't eating the chips and the crisps and a lot of the more processed foods. I was also not drinking alcohol as much. I mean, I have an occasional beer. I'm in Germany. I mean, the beer is good here, but very occasional. But it was really focusing on more of those types of foods, and that resulted in the weight dropping off. But now, where we've moved to now, and think it's where we naturally want to be, because it feels good and we love it. We eat the same every day. We eat a lot of raw salads, but also we often, particularly in the colder months, we will steam. We love steamed veggies, and sometimes we'll just get a steaming pot. We don't use this Instapot yet. We've heard all about it, and it sounds great. We just use an old-fashioned steamer, and we'll just actually throw everything in together. And I'm pretty good at gauging when everything's ready. So we've one of the things we love, and I don't know whether it's something that people have tried, but it actually blew our minds. I can't believe we'd never tried it. It's steaming mushrooms. Steamed mushrooms are absolutely superb because they retain all of their water, and they're so juicy. It's just like having a mushroom that you maybe used to have fried the unhealthy way. If you steam it for 5 to 10 minutes, absolutely brilliant. So we'll have things like that. Make lots of curry sauces to go with vegetables.
And we haven't talked about breakfast yet. So
oh no, let's
breakfast is usually, it used to be a smoothie. We still occasionally have smoothies, but not so often. Now it's a big bowl of fruit followed by oats usually, and the oats have gone through a process as well. We used to just buy standard oats, and then we found that there were these sprouted oats that were processed as well that we were getting in Britain, and so we used to get them and have them cold, sort of overnight oats. And now I've realized I can buy in Germany here the grains that are not treated, and I can sprout them. So we're eating sprouted oats for breakfast and loving it, actually.
And sprouted buckwheat.
Yeah, sprouted buckwheat.
And well, we make our own yogurt, soya yogurt as well, without any heating. It's just got a special kind of
it's like a thermos, flask almost, a big fat flask.
So we buy the soya milk ready. We don't make our own soy milk, but we buy that in a carton, add it to this thing together with the cultures, leave it literally for 12 hours overnight, and it makes the most perfect yogurt. So we'll have that with our sprouted oats, buckwheat, and date paste as well. Annette grinds up dates. That's the only sweetener we really tend to use now. So not date syrup, but dates, actually the whole date just blended with water, made into a paste, and that we use that. That's a fantastic sweetener. Of course, very high high sugar, so we don't want to eat too much of that. But I mentioned earlier that I called Annette the dressings queen, but she's also the sprouting queen. Annette recently came across Doug Evans, the sprouting man, and read his book. And now the kitchen is like a farm. She's got all these things on the go, and I'm the beneficiary. I mean, I just turn up at the table and they're all there. So sprouts, absolutely brilliant. We can't recommend them enough.
Yeah, I've sprouted for about 20 years, but not quite as prolifically, and I'm loving it. It's absolutely superb. I loved his enthusiasm. It is worth, I would say it's worth getting his book if you're interested in sprouting, because it's not just a how-to, it's all the why and how exciting it is. And that's good. That's great when you get that from somebody. It certainly made a difference to me. So sprouting is definitely part of the meal plan these days, and it's not just breakfast, but we did the beans and lentils and chickpeas and alfalfa and broccoli, lots of broccoli, of course, because sprouted broccoli is the thing, and red clover and radish and fenugreek, all sorts of things. I've done flax seeds, I've done chia seeds, you could sprout them too, and hemp seeds. Quite a lot. There's more, but I won't give you a whole list of sprouts just because it's not necessary.
I think also it's worth saying that we differ in terms of our macronutrient. I know a lot of people like to hear about the macronutrient ratios, etc., and we do differ on those a little bit. I tend to have probably on average, I have more fat. I probably eat, well, not probably, I eat a little bit more in the way of nuts than Annette does, because I think since she had the episode with her, what she thought was too much fat in her liver, she's very, very careful with that. But I'm around about 10% protein, about 20 to 25% fat on average, and that leaves me with what, about 65% carbohydrate, 70% carb, whereas Annette is generally around 10% protein, 15% fat, and the rest carbohydrates. So we do differ a little bit there. And I think we both, it works for each of us how we have that. And I suppose in terms of raw to cooked, we're probably around about 75.
Well, again, that's slightly different because your tea tends to be a little bit cooked, whereas mine isn't. So I think we're slightly different there as well.
But on average, around 75% raw.
Right. Do you have any problem finding plant-based foods in Germany?
Oh, it's one of the reasons for coming to Berlin. It's quite a vegan capital, so it's quite easy. And we're keen on wherever possible getting organic. And in Britain, we had trouble occasionally getting certain things that we wanted organic. Well, here we've got probably easily 20 organic supermarkets within walking distance. And seriously, they are superb. The fresh veg is just out there ready for you to pick up and put in your basket. And it's lovely because they don't really package stuff to the same degree as well. Everything's all in plastic in Britain, plastic everywhere, wrap it up. But not here. It's nice. It's all open, and you just take what you need and weigh it and pay for it. It's great. So we're really well catered for here, and we found some quite nice places to eat out as well. We're looking for more because, of course, a vegan capital isn't necessarily synonymous with whole food plant-based. So some of the places might do really, really nice vegan burgers, but that's not quite our thing. So we don't go to those.
Yeah, we struggle with that. I think we would struggle in a provincial city in Germany, probably more so than we do in Berlin, but Berlin's a world city, really.
But it's changing in Germany. There is definitely a noticeable move towards eating more plant foods and cutting back on the animal products, which is really encouraging. It's good to see.
Yeah, there's quite a buzz around it here now as well. And but I think that I was really surprised at the level of the availability of fresh, all the different varieties of fresh vegetables and fruit here. I thought Britain would be better, and that's probably because I'm British. Being naturally British, I thought, oh yeah, it's better than everywhere else. Completely wrong. I mean, it really is excellent.
Fantastic. So you do most of the cooking, Annette?
It's still the case that if it doesn't require heat, yes, I'm in there, and I will happily do that. But if there is any cooking to be done, I leave that to Graham. He's better at it than I am. He's much better at it. So when we do have anything cooked, he tends to do it.
Yeah, but it's just putting it in a steamer. Really.
Mostly, yeah. You've done it.
I mean, we don't do really kind of high tech, like recipes. It's fairly straightforward. I'm generally spending most of my time in the kitchen chopping and peeling, and that's it. And Annette does the creativity with the dressings, and she does all the sprouting, as I say, which. I probably haven't got the attention span to do all the sprouting. She spends quite a lot of time doing that. It's a real labour of love.
I really enjoy it. It's quite mindful, and you see these little things growing, and you've got this nature going on in your kitchen. It really is exciting. It's wonderful. I probably should also own up to the fact that we had our kitchen done when we moved here, and we decided not to bother having an oven because we just wouldn't use it enough. We didn't use one very much when we were in Britain. So
no. We've got the hob with the hot plates, but no actual oven. So we can't bake or roast. I used to make sourdough bread actually, and Annette's actually gluten intolerant.
Which I wasn't, and that was something else that seemed to coincide with this chronic fatigue. So and it was deeply unpleasant, and it affected me. It affected my mental health. It was awful.
So I had to throw away this was when we were still in the UK, I had to throw away my 12-month-old sourdough starter, tears. Yeah. No, not really. And because I was generally using rye and spelt flour, and Annette couldn't eat it, and there was too much to eat on my own. So I thought, well, that was the only reason that we used the oven. So we don't need an oven. Let's just get an extra cupboard in our kitchen.
Which we do use.
Do you have an Instant Pot?
No, we mentioned that earlier, actually. We've heard a lot about it on these kind of shows, actually. And I think it sounds as though it's quite a thing in the United States. But we've not actually arrived at that point yet. As I say, we use an old-fashioned, just a pan with hot water with a steaming tray in it and a lid. And that's really all we use for cooking. And it sounds pretty primitive, doesn't it? But it does the job.
Or a pan, or rice or whatever.
Yeah. When we're obviously cooking beans or etc., then we use a standard pan. What about you? Can you recommend it?
I really like it, especially, I mean, really, if you cook beans, it's one of the easiest ways to do it. It can do it in 10 or 20 minutes, depending on whether or not you've soaked them.
Oh, really? Oh, that would be good, actually. Yeah.
How much did they retail for? Usually?
Wow. I mean, like here, I've seen them for $69 at Walmart, sometimes less. I mean, they're not very costly. I mean, at least by US standards, that would be kind of a cool tool for you.
I think we'll add that to the Christmas list.
We have wondered about it before.
Yeah, maybe we should. Yeah, it sounds like a great idea. I mean, we've got a dehydrator, and we've got a blender, as we mentioned earlier.
Loads of blenders.
Loads of little blenders and stuff like that. But in terms of that sounds like a really cool idea. So we'll probably have to look into that.
Oh, why not? Here's a question. Who's it from? From Dina. Are you fluent in German?
Pretty much. We'd like to be more fluent. And we both actually studied German at university, which is how we first met, because we first met in 1983 when we were doing our year abroad. Because we've each studied German at different UK universities, and we had to choose where we wanted to spend a year abroad, where you meant to enhance your German skills. And we arrived at the same city in Germany, a little place called Trier on the border with Luxembourg. That's where we first met. And so, yes, our German is decent, and we both use it in our careers. I was teaching German for a while, and you were traveling around Germany quite a lot. But I'd love to have practiced it a bit more, but it's got so much better just recently, AJ. We've finally got the masks away, and I can see people talking, and they are talking, and you have conversations in shops now, and it's great. So it's getting better.
Aber wir können ja beide Deutsch sprechen.
Aber nicht jetzt.
Nice. What about exercise?
It's primarily walking at the moment, and lots of it every day. I can't not go out for 2 walks. I have to morning and afternoon.
She's so restless. She doesn't.
I can't stand not going out for walks. So Graham, being very obliging, comes with me. So he gets the exercise as well. And I've done this is something I've done all my life. I used to walk to and from school, which was a couple of miles each way, and there's always been normal for me.
We've both got apps on our phone, and I guess that we know that they're accurate because they're different apps, and they both give us the same score. And consistently, we walk 35 miles a week. So that's an average of 5 miles a day, which is quite a good amount. I mean, it's not kind of, like really vigorous kind of marching out type walking. It's just walking. So it's being active. We did do some jogging last year in the local park. And every time I did that, I used to pull a calf muscle, which was a bit of a weakness of one of my calf muscles. So I think I'll have to try that again, start it again. But Annette does do the odd bit of rock climbing.
Give them a chance.
As well.
I like rock climbing.
Yeah, but walking is our main function.
Thank you. Monica says German Amazon carries various Instant Pots. And Sue says, are there many vegan options where you live, such as restaurants or markets?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. The restaurants we've kind of slightly referred to already. There are loads. There are loads of vegan restaurants and plenty of options for vegans within other restaurants and cafes. But as we alluded to earlier, they tend to be mostly they're not vegan junk food. That would be unfair, but they're not whole foods
kind
either.
Of vegan street food, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose.
So a lot of seitan and that kind of thing. There's not as much of the kind of whole food plant-based
but there are some
offering as we would like, but there are some. You've just got to look for them. But also, it's relatively recent for us that we've been able to explore them, because Germany has been in quite strict lockdown since we arrived, and they eventually opened everything up about 6 weeks ago. We've been here 18 months, and it was really only until 6 weeks ago that we've been able to kind of get out and really explore properly.
But the market question is a good one. There's that superb. Some of the markets are excellent, and there's one very local to us every Saturday, and it's magnificent, great, wonderful stalls full of produce. And there are some vegan only stores as well. And again, because we're whole food, plant based, we tend not to go to them because we don't really buy products very much at all. So it is the fruit and veg that we're on the lookout for, and it's excellent. But the other stalls do exist too.
Yeah, there's a guy at the local market who makes his own. He's married to a Japanese lady, and he makes organic tofu and
tempeh
tempeh
and natto.
and natto, and we go there, and he said that we're one of his best customers. Natto, by the way, if you've not tried it, it's a bit of a challenge, but we eat it once a week to get our vitamin K2, it is definitely an acquired taste, but it's great. But the other thing as well is there's a great chain in Berlin called Vegans, Veganz. It's a chain of, it's 3 stores, completely vegan, we really like that. So there are plenty of options. If anyone listening to this or watching this is keen on a visit to Berlin and is plant-based, I think you'll be blown away by it. It's
very doable.
Really is doable.
That sounds great. I have the guest tomorrow, Linda Middlesworth, went to Germany and talked about how fabulous that store was. So tell us about your website and how you work with people.
Okay.
Yeah. So our website, so it's www.henryandhenryeu, as in European Union.com. And what we do is we've got resources that people can check out. We put up recipes, we put up interesting articles. We also have done a series of interviews where we give a spotlight to people who we feel that have got really remarkable stories to tell, either stories of recovery from illness with a plant-based diet, or it can be something else that we feel is of interest. And it's usually people working in the vegan space, the plant-based space, and we really enjoy interviewing people and giving them an extra chance to get out there as well. So they're available to watch on our website.
It's called Your Story.
Your Story, yeah. We also do another series of interviews called Changemaker, where we want to give, again, spotlight to people who we feel are contributing to change in the world, meaningful change, making the world a more compassionate place. And Dr. Shireen Kassam, who we mentioned earlier that you've interviewed, we did one with her recently as well. So that's kind of quite diverse. We also run regular courses, like usually hour-long courses on, Annette ran a sprouting class recently to give people an idea just how to get started with sprouting, what the benefits are. We've also done courses I did one on 8 tips for weight loss, what works for me.
And why, because we start to figure out why, and that's kind of interesting because you don't know these things otherwise. But having studied the course that we did with Drs. Vic and Karin Dina, that we feel we've got some understanding now as to why it happened. What was the factor or the factors that enabled that to happen?
But we're very much building our offering really, because we started about a year ago with this website, and we're constantly thinking about what issues do people. It's a real learning process to find out what is it that people actually want, because sometimes you assume that, oh yeah, this is of interest to us, so we'll put a class out there. But sometimes it's not always the case. So we're really building our audience and learning from people what is it they want to see. And we're not quite there yet, because there's a whole load of things that we want to add to it. And but hopefully, we've got some really good followers, and we've got a membership subscription based. You can either join as a free member and get access to a number of resources, or you can be a paid member and get entry onto our classes for free. And Annette also teaches a meditation course, because we feel that one of the things that's really important in all of this that we're doing is to help people to become more aware, to grow awareness of, awareness around the way you eat, the choices you make, etc. And one way of doing that is to become do it through meditation, where to basically culture better awareness and mindfulness and Annette's and compassion. And Annette's an accredited mind calm coach, so that's something else that we do offer.
That's fabulous. I saw a YouTube that you did, Annette, and you had this little clever thing about the 6 C's to eating more fruits and vegetables. I did a video once called the 7 C's to superior salad satisfaction. So tell us about that.
I think this is the 6 S's, if I remember right. This is something I did last year. And it was just really a means of encouraging people to think more about fruits and vegetables and incorporate more into whatever diet they've got at this point. And I probably started with smoothies because they're easy, and there are so many different ways you can enhance a smoothie. And I would think I recommended bananas. Always put a banana in a smoothie. If in doubt, put a banana in. And a lot of different green vegetables will work. So it doesn't have to be just kale, although that's one of our favorites if we're making a smoothie. We do like spinach, but we also like to ensure that we're having those leafy vegetables that have got quite a lot of available calcium and iron and so on in them. And one day we realized that the only leafy vegetable we had in the fridge was romaine lettuce, and it worked a treat. So there's all sorts that will work in a smoothie. So smoothie first, and you can sweeten a smoothie with a date or two if it's not sweet enough. So that's one that we definitely had in. Salad will have been there, and I think I probably said that if your salad's boring, then it's a lack of imagination, which is a little unkind maybe, but it is simply because I'm trying to convey the idea that a salad isn't what we grew up with, which was lettuce, tomato, and cucumber. At least one of those would probably be quite limp as well. That was a salad when we were growing up, and it can be so much more. It can be cooked, it can be raw, it can be leafy, it can be made with legumes in it. A salad is such a wide concept, and to have a salad every day is actually interesting and varied if you want it to be. And again, it's the whole thing about making the dressing exciting and flavoursome. And that's easy to do. And this will have been another S. This will have been under sauces, I think, sauces and dressings. Just bringing together flavours that you enjoy. Because if you enjoy, let's say, chili con carne, then very often for a lot of people, it's not so much the carne, it's not the meat, but the flavour of the sauce that goes with it. So having those flavours is still entirely possible with anything plant-based. And in that way, those foods get to be appealing in the way that they were before. Because again, and go back to the chili, you'll have beans with it. So you can do a chili con carne with the right sauce and just let go of the carne and have more of the beans. So it is quite easy to do. Sauces, I think it takes a little bit of getting your head around doing them without oil, if that's what you choose to do. And that is what we did. That was a bit of a stumbling block at first when we first went in that direction, but that's possible. So what have we got? We've got smoothies, salads, sauces, soups. We've done a lot of soups in our time. And because we've got one of those big blenders, I was in Omni Blend, but a lot of people have Vitamix. It's more or less the same thing. We were actually making effectively raw soups by putting in, let's see, what was our favorite parsnip? We used to really like parsnip soup. Chop up a parsnip, put it in with a bit of miso, water, a bit of lemon juice, maybe a few chia seeds or cashews if we wanted a bit of extra creaminess. Curry powder, that's it. Just blend it all up in that machine because it's so powerful. To have it on for what was about 6 minutes.
6 minutes, yeah.
It warmed it up, really warm enough to eat, but not really cooked. So we used to make them, and that was really easy to do. Obviously, if you've not got the big blender, then you could still do the same thing and warm it in a pan or whatever when you blended it. But they're easy, and you can get loads of vegetables in something like that as well. And it's very easy, and you can always add a few things that you might wish you could like but don't quite like. So you can do this with the smoothies as well. In fact, I think we've said that with celery before. Those people who don't much like celery but wish they did because they think it's healthy, start with a little bit of celery and build up, and then you don't taste it so much if it's surrounded by other things. So what do we have there? We've got soups, salad, sauces, smoothies. S for steamed as well, because we really favour steaming vegetables over most other cooking methods, for the simple reason that you will retain quite a lot of nutrition that way, and because steaming doesn't cook much of it out, so you are benefiting quite substantially from steaming your vegetables. In terms of the nutrition loss, it's minimal, but also there's no chance of any, certainly of the known cooked food toxins. You can't get them from steaming. It's too gentle. It doesn't fry them to death. You don't get charred pieces on them that are not really ideal to be eating on a frequent basis. So steaming we give quite high priority to. So wherever have I got all of them? steaming, salads, smoothies, soups, sauces. That's 5. What's missing?
We could add sprouting now.
We would add sprouting now.
Or maybe spices. I don't know.
Oh, it was spices. They want spices. Yeah, because they are the way of really exciting your taste buds on any occasion, and it's such a useful thing to do as well. We tend to think of spices for savoury things, but of course there are spices that can be used in, again, if you're using, if you want to sweeten up a smoothie, for example, or sweeten any kind of dessert, but don't really want to be adding too much sweetener, whatever your sweetener is, you can use ginger if that's appropriate to what you're making, or cinnamon. And because there's an association with those spices as belonging to sweet dishes, they tend to give us the sense of being sweet, and they can really help you to reduce your intake of the other sweeteners, especially if you're using sugar. Try and maybe ease that out a little bit.
And they've also got all the other properties, like the anti-inflammatory properties of ginger, and the blood sugar balancing properties of cinnamon, etc. Whatever. It's just, this is it. I mean, nature provides so much that's of use. Sometimes we just completely ignore it, and we feel that going plant-based just opens up a whole new realm of eating, rather than being prohibitive, which I think a lot of people who are not plant-based and don't want to become plant-based think that no, they'll be missing out. But we feel that there's so much to gain as well.
Fantastic. Well, I appreciate the work you're doing. If somebody wants to connect with you other than your website, do you like to send them to one of your social media sites?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you go onto our website, you'll be able to hook up with us or find out our Facebook and Instagram site as well. But Facebook, it's Henry and Henry Europe. Sorry, is it?
That's the Instagram.
Henry and Henry, sorry, on Facebook. And Instagram is Henry and Henry Europe. And I didn't tell the story about Henry and Henry and why we're called Henry and Henry. Apart from the fact it's my family name, there's a couple of women, quite beautiful women in the UK, who are renowned for doing a food program called Hemsley and Hemsley. So we thought we'll be the older version of them, and we'll call ourselves Henry and Henry to emulate what they. That was the original reason.
Tongue-in-cheek, actually.
Yeah, very tongue-in-cheek. Yeah, so that was.
That's why we're Henry and Henry.
That is great. Well, I have all that information in the show notes, so people can see your website, your Instagram, your Facebook, if they'd like to connect with you.
Excellent.
We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah.
We're always willing to engage in dialogue with people and hear.
And if you want to become a free member, we'll invite you to our closed Facebook page as well, so that you can join in the conversation.
Nice. And congratulations, Graham, on your tremendous weight loss success, and Annette on your reversal of your endometriosis.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. It was a pleasure connecting with you. And thanks all of you for watching another episode of Chef AJ Live. Please come back tomorrow a few hours earlier, 9 a.m. Pacific time, when my guests are Linda Middlesworth. She is a mover and a shaker in the plant-based world up here in the Sacramento area. She's almost 80 and she looks maybe 50, and she's going to be joined by Peter Goldstein, and they're going to talk about one thing that everyone can do to make a great change in their health. Take care, Annette.